Let's start this section by first defining the word ecosystem. An ecosystem is the interaction of groups of living organisms with the physical environment. It's like a big picture, how things interact to help each other out. When we investigate ecosystems, it may be difficult to get students, especially at the primary level, to be able to make this definition. But to understand some of the primary concepts that support ecology shouldn't be too difficult. Let's first start by learning about what animals need to survive. What do we need to survive? Well, we need food, water, air, and we need a place to live, shelter, and we also need space. Develop these concepts through pictures, activities, or discussions, or even bulletin boards in your classroom. Take a look at what animals eat other animals. What type of foods do animals live on? Get students to see what they ate for breakfast or lunch, or even bring a lunchroom plate in and look at all the food on the lunchroom plate and see where that food came from originally. Another thing to do is see what type of homes animals live in. Maybe make a bulletin board on animal homes. Homes are adapted for particular animals. Some animals can't live in other animals' homes. Let's take this bird nest for example. Could a fish live in a bird nest? Or could a bird live underwater? There are certain things that animals need, and it's important to get students to discover these needs. Too often we take much of this for granted. For example, where does our water come from? Students could go on a field trip to the water plant and see that there's a number of people and machines working hard to make that water come out of their faucet. Where does sewage go? Where does our food come from? People don't realize that we live in a community and the community supports our life. So do animals. They have their communities too. Many animals live together, the same species. They live in groups to help themselves. They also live with other animals. Certain groups don't live together. For example, you wouldn't find a polar bear in the Amazon jungle, nor would you find a parrot living at the North Pole. You can always have an activity of which animals live in the same communities. Let them circle the one that doesn't belong. They can also continue to investigate animal homes and shelters and realize that a home is much more than just a house. It's extended out into more of a neighborhood that includes all of these resources that help the animals to survive. This predator-prey relationship is also valuable to learn about. It may seem cruel when a mountain lion leaps on a deer and kills it for dinner, but it's all in the interest of keeping nature in balance. What would happen if we had no mountain lion? Well, the deer would overgraze on the vegetation. There'd be less food for the insects. There'd be less insects, less food for the birds, and so on, and then even erosion because there's less vegetation. So there's a lot of implications. And when man cuts in and modifies a food chain in one way or another, he can have some drastic consequences and actually change the environment. Let's continue to investigate food chains and how one animal eats another with this simple activity. Here I have a piece of wood with 8 nails. They're finishing nails and they're hammered in at different places. The next step is to make a template. Lay a piece of paper over the nails and carefully press down on it so the nails pop through. And then draw circles around the nail holes so you have your template. You can now make more of these boards by just laying the paper on the board and pounding the nails in at the points. You can also use this template to make your information sheets that you'll hand out to students. This particular one has a sun, a plant, an insect, a bird, and a cat. Students can fill in the blank spaces under the picture to identify the object. The next step is to punch out all 8 holes with a pencil. The safest way to do this is to lay it on the desk and put your hand on the paper and bend it up and press the pencil lead through the top picture. Once all 8 holes are punched in, you take the template and lay it over the nails. And then each student group will get one piece of yarn and start with the primary food source and tie that piece of yarn onto the primary food source. Now that of course will be the sun. That's where all the food starts from, where the energy begins. What uses sun energy to get food? Well, plants do. So we go from the sun to the plant. Eventually they'll connect all the little food sources together, the food chain, and they'll come up with something that looks like this. Notice from the knot, we wrap it once around this nail and go to the next one until we finally get to the very last nail where we tie it down. You might have about 5 different pages so that when one group gets through with one, they can bring it up, have it checked off, and go on to the next one. And remember that these boards can be used by the intermediate teachers too when they investigate food webs. Another important topic to investigate is carrying capacity and space, and how valuable space is to a community of animals. Let's think about your classroom. If you had a classroom that was only half the size and all the students had to sit very, very close together, how would that affect their ability to learn, for example? Well, try it. Get all of your students and put all the chairs very close together, or make them sit practically on top of each other. Make 4 people share 3 chairs, for example, and then conduct a 10-minute class lesson and see how much information they learned. Ask them what they felt about being that close together in a classroom situation, and how valuable space is to living organisms. You can continue with this topic by investigating animals and discussing how close one can get to particular animals before they either become aggressive and chase us away, or turn and flee and move off to a safer distance. There are also ethical questions involved in the study of ecology. There's things that man does that helps the environment, and there's things that he does that harms the environment. Students might go around and look for examples of each. On the positive side, they might see recycling efforts. And on the negative side, they might see initials carved in trees or lawns that are cut up by bicycles. Now, ecology, remember, is everything we've studied already in life science put together and working in a community and interfacing with the physical environment. We as people live within this community, and we are actually part of this ecosystem. So we should give due respect to all the other life forms within the system. Now, as we come to the end of this tape, I'd like to remind you that there are other areas of science that should get equal emphasis. These are the earth sciences and the physical sciences.